What is going on, everybody? It has been a really, really, really long time since me and my Monday co-host of the Empire State of Mind podcast, Al, me and him haven't talked probably in a good 3 months about 49ers stuff. So we're just going to come on here and talk 49ers off season. No real script, just kind of going off how we feel, maybe how we would grade it, or what kind of like overarching analysis of like the direction of what the offseason and how it took shape from free agency to losing players to draft to coaching moves, all that stuff. We're going to talk about that for the next hour or so. But Al, how you doing, man? It's been a long time.
Dude, it's been a while. No shortage of stuff to talk about once things got rolling with the draft and free agency. But glad we're able to connect. Yeah, man, it's been at least a couple months. Let's get into it.
Overall, before we get into specifics, what would you consider? How do you feel about the Niners offseason as a whole? If you had to if you had to say good, bad, indifferent, like what's your overall feeling on everything?
I think, and everyone loves to kind of give grades. I would give it like a solid B plus, A minus. I mean, it started awkward and rocky, right? With everybody that they lost. But I know you and I were in agreement for a while with the players that were going to be shown the door or cut and then brought back, like a Kyle Juszczyk. Modest free agent signings, nothing that broke the bank. And then the draft, they definitely filled some needs. And the coaching changes between Saleh coming back and obviously swapping out the special teams coordinator. They attacked a lot of the areas of weakness that this team has outside of swing tackle. I think that's probably still the biggest thing that they need to work on. And obviously to see how all of these players, especially these young players, are going to come together. On paper, it looks like right now it's a healthier team than it was last season for sure, or at the end of the last season. But we have to see how the pieces are going to fit. I think every team, with the exception of maybe like the Browns and the Panthers, like the bottom feeders, it's the season of optimism. So I think everyone's kind of, feeling good, and the vast majority of teams are starting from the same level playing field. But we'll see. If the rookies can play 80-85% of what we think they're going to be, and some of the free agent acquisitions fit, and Saleh re-energizes the offense, and McCaffrey can stay healthy, and Williams, it's going to start with health no matter what. I think this is a team that is going to compete for the NFC West and maybe make a little bit of noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, I've done so. I did a little bit of draft stuff, not too much. I've lost. I don't know. I lost my zeal to get really hardcore into the draft, and I think it's cost me the last couple off seasons of just not knowing what's going on in the draft. But I figure we start with coaching. One of the biggest things that kind of started the off season, and it was the rehiring of Robert Saleh. And I've asked this question to Dre Area Sports. I've asked this question to Sterling Bennett. Part of me, when I saw the transactions that happened and the people that left, I said to myself, okay, now I agree why they're leaving, and I agree what's going on as far as like health and how they're trying to look at this through the eyes of like, okay, we could pay these guys a lot of money, but there's a good chance they're not going to be on the field, and we're got to try to cut cost because we have deals coming up and we have to pay our quarterback, right? So all that stuff happened. One of the things that we've agreed on, at least me and those couple guys, is I think the 49ers really have a belief that Robert Saleh can make up for the loss of the experience and maybe some of, just the talent overall with his coaching, and that they're willing to kind of go in a direction with rookies with with no NFL experience, and kind of really just put all their eggs in the Robert Saleh basket this offseason or this coming season, and let kind of Robert Saleh craft and kind of shape this new defense with these new players with different skill sets who have no NFL cachet behind them. We have no idea what they're going to be. I feel like they've said, okay, we're going to take that chance with rookies and less experienced people and people not as well known in free agency, and we're going to put in Robert Saleh's basket.
Yeah. I think I agree with that, and I think it's very fair to say. I mean, when you look at when Saleh came here with Kyle and John during the first stint in 2017, it was an expansion team with a little bit of experience in terms of they brought in Hoyer, they brought in, Juszczyk. Warner was a rookie, right? Bosa wasn't drafted until 2019. I mean, Warner wasn't a rookie yet, excuse me, but they had Marquise Goodwin on offense. They had some experienced players, but there was a lot of youth, and that defense struggled so much in 27-18. Then they bring in, 2018 Richard Sherman, a little bit more experience. Things were getting a little bit better. Things didn't click until the end of the second year, the beginning of the third year. So Saleh has only gotten more experienced as a coach, as a football evaluator, as a person, as a DC since 2017, leaving after the 2020 season, being with the Jets for 3+ years, and then coming back. He hasn't called plays in 3+ years. It's been mainly Jeff Ulbrich, but that's going to be like, never forgetting how to ride a bike. The energy is going to be infectious. There's not a lot of relationship carryover. I think it's only literally Warner and Bosa who were on the squad the last time that Saleh was here. But you have your veterans, you have a bunch of players that know the 49er way, if there is such a thing. Let's believe that there is, and how Saleh wants to do things. It is great that they're giving, it sounds like, Saleh that autonomy, but it's scary from a what about after this year standpoint. What about after 2026 if he only stays a year or two? They signed Gus Bradley as a defensive assistant, which was a sneaky good move, and even more experienced DC than Robert Saleh, although his last couple of years in Indianapolis weren't anything great to write home about. If Saleh can be a major force multiplier to get them to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl this season in Santa Clara, and then he leaves, I'm good with that. I'm not sure with the fan base how much time post Super Bowl that'll buy folks, but I agree with you three guys. I think there's something to be said for an experienced DC and head coach coming in with a lot of young players versus Nick Sorensen last year with more. They went heavier veterans last year and a rookie DC, and that didn't work out. Now they're doing the exact opposite, and it should yield better results.
One of the things we talked about, I think, two things. I feel like rookies don't have a lot of, they've never experienced what they're about to experience in the NFL, so they don't have any opinions formulated or have any feelings towards a certain DC or a certain type of coaching or scheme. They're coming in raw, they're clay, and I feel because of that, they can be sculpted. Veterans come in to get paid. Some of them buy in, some of them don't. Some people play for money. They're just about getting paid. The Hargrave signing was one of those things. Like, yeah, he was really good. He got himself paid, and then he came to the 49ers and he wasn't all that great, and they let him go after 2 seasons. I think with the young guys, it's more of a thing of like these guys have no other experience to fall back on other than college, and now they're in the NFL. And I feel like someone as rambunctious and excitable and as passionate as Robert Saleh is the perfect coach for rookies. One of the things we've discussed over the last couple weeks on the channel is there's going to be some growing pains, bro. And I really think the 49ers offense this year is going to really have to carry the load at sometimes, because if we're having trouble stopping a guy like Kyler Murray with experienced defensive players, imagine a bunch of rookies coming in here who've never faced a quarterback like that, a guy who can move and make off-platform throws and piss you off like Russell Wilson did back in the day, where you think you have him and you don't, and then he rips off a 60-yard throw, and it's just like, oh my God. Those are the things that I worry about. And I feel, to me personally, that the Niners defense is going to come into its own late in the season. I feel like there's going to be a lot of growing pains. That's why when people see the schedule and people see the fourth place schedule and they're like, oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can win all these games. But I look at it in a completely different light, which is, oh yeah, the schedule looks inviting for a veteran 49er team with not a lot of rookies. 3 losses, maybe 4, no doubt, right? With the experience we're coming into this year with, like, Brandon Ayuk being out for a little bit, and then you're going to have the defense have all these new faces. when you give people a record that is not as, visually appealing, and you say like
Mhm.
maybe 7 losses, 6 losses, 5 losses, people are like, how can you say that? And I think the defense at some points in the season is going to be responsible for some of that stuff happening.
No, I'm with you. I think every season, especially given the fact that nobody plays in the preseason. I mean, the Niners have a bunch of young players and rookies. They can't sit everybody. I mean, some undrafted rookie free agents, some camp fodder, training camp heroes, as I like to call them, are going to get extended playing time in the preseason and any joint practices. But the first month of the season, it's going to be sloppy football across the league, but generally the defenses are ahead of offenses because defenses read and react and offenses more timing. So even with young players, I think the Niners are lucky given the fact that the first 4 games are at Seattle, tough. Right? We don't know how Darnold's going to shake out, but I'd want a quarterback like a Sam Darnold early before he can get settled in with his offense and before maybe he stops seeing ghosts because he's more comfortable than at New Orleans with a completely ridiculous quarterback situation, at home for Arizona, at home for Jacksonville. So they have 3 of their first 4 games are teams that are under 500 last year. Granted, so is San Francisco, but if they needed a ramp up period to settle themselves, to understand how everybody fits together, those 4 games outside of at Seattle again are a good 4 to start the season with before you go to the Rams and go to the Buccaneers. And then you get, the schedule has kind of, fits and starts to it. But the first 4 games, I think, can accommodate what, Saleh and the rookies want to do. And, at least from a youth standpoint, I'm hoping, much like, say, Philadelphia's defense last year, they're coming to a team in San Francisco, in the Super Bowl, 2 of the past 5-6 seasons, had a down year, historic, prideful franchise. As a rookie, I'm sure they don't want to be viewed as the weak link, right? That now they can't control things that they don't know, lack of experience. They don't know what they don't know yet going into the league. But at most, I mean, it still sounds like a lot, right? At most, 4 rookies will start. Like it'll be maybe Bosa, Williams. I don't think 2 defensive tackles are going to start. It'll probably be Anderson and Alfred Collins or West. One of those 2. Maybe Nick Martin starts at linebacker. Maybe Upton Stout starts at nickel cornerback. And I think the safeties will be Pinnock and Jair Brown until Malik Mustafa gets healthy. So when you're talking about 4 out of 11, that's over 30%. That's a good amount. But at least Williams is bookended by Bosa. At least Collins will be playing next to a veteran. At least Martin will be playing next to Warner. At least the nickelback Stout will be kind of bookended by Green and Diamador Lenore. Not like you can hide those guys, but it's not an expansion team roster, which I think so many people were thinking. Like the Larry Krugers of the world said, oh, they got to have a draft of at least 15 or 16 rookies coming in. I'm thinking, you cover this team. You have no idea what you're talking about. There's no way. So 4 rookies at the most starting is a lot. But if Saleh could be the equalizer and then they can get through that first month at the worst 2-2, if not 3-1, they might be rolling on to like an 11, 12 win season.
Before we go into special teams, because I think that's important, especially with, even though the league is kind of really seems like it's going away from special teams, the Niners were so unbelievably bad last year that like we still had to, I mean, like just a complete rehaul or overhaul, excuse me. But yeah, like this the defense has potential, and it could be something special if all these young guys, play up to their draft stock, especially Michael Williams. My fear a little bit still to this day is the depth. Just they don't have any. They really don't have much depth on the defensive line. Um, Part of me thinks they might pick somebody up in training camp, and part of me thinks if they're having a good season and they go into the mid part of the season with a good record, I wouldn't be shocked if they made a move like they always do for a player that they can come and plug in and put on defense on the defensive line. Because defensive line is kind of like the Niners' obsession, right? Every year, no matter who the DC is or who's on the field, it's the thing that they've always seemed to put the most resources into. So yeah, D line is still a little bit, to me. It's a Like they're so thin. They can't really have any injuries on that defensive line. That's why I think some of the cuts that they made in the offs, like the Greenlaw one, expected. Hufanga, expected. Um, Getting rid of Leonard Floyd and getting rid of I forget the defensive tackle, like getting rid of those two guys and not really bringing in any veteran to kind of like one for one, like the trade off, get another defensive lineman in free agency. Those are the things that still kind of give me worry because like you're right, you're not going to have rookies starting all along the defensive line, next to Bosa. So we'll see. I mean, like that's my biggest worry. And then, like I said, inexperience, the rookie wall, all those things, those are all real things that do happen in the National Football League. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, last year they started out with their 53 with only 8 men on the D line, 4 DNs, 4 D tackles. I think unless they don't believe in 10 players, I would love to see them go 5 D tackles, 5 DNs. And I've already started sketching out what the 53 can look like, just, positionally, how many quarterback, running backs, receiver, tight ends, all that good stuff. And getting rid of Leonard Floyd, I'm just wondering, like what you're saying, later in training camp or making a trade, do they scour the trade market or the waiver wire for another D end? Even though Samo had a good year, he's a smaller DN, right? You're talking like 6'1", 270, 6'2 at the most. They got rid of Floyd, who was taller but weighed less. Bosa, Yator, Michael Williams, even Robert Beal. They're all 6'4", 6'5 guys, big 265 plus guys. So I could see them maybe wanting to add another beefier body on at DN. But if Samo is your DN 4 or 5, like, I don't want to say how much better can you get, but at Lynch and company should always be looking to upgrade anywhere that they can. And it still comes back to me. It's so amazing how QB3 to me, if they keep a third quarterback, is going to have such a ripple effect on, could they keep or do they keep a 4th running back or a 4th tight end or a 6th linebacker or a 6th cornerback for a position that you can keep Tanner Mordecai on the practice squad. Like, I don't think Tanner Mordecai is locked to make the roster. I think Kyle's 3 quarterback thing was an overreaction to the Philly championship game. But now that you have Brock, and if Brock and Mac Jones leave the preseason or training camp healthy, I'm curious if that's a position they'd look to trim, because they're, to your point, they don't have a lot of depth everywhere. And even though it's only one roster spot, I'd rather have a 10th D lineman than a 3rd quarterback.
Yeah. Well, defensive line to me is the most the most worrisome position, even healthy. I just feel like they're really thin.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those type of fans who thinks they need to go out and spend a bunch of money in free agency every single year. I think it's foolish, because usually the teams that do the best in free agency usually have the worst seasons. You know what I mean? I don't want to win in March. I want to win in September, October, November, December, and January and February. I want to win those months. I don't care about March. Everybody gets really into it. Like, oh my God, look, who are these bums that the Niners signed? They signed a lot of nobodies, and I was kind of going back and forth. I know me and Mike Finn, we know him on X. Like, he has been very positive about the Niners offseason. And I am, but I also said, truthfully, they need to nail this draft. If they're going to go in the direction that they appear to be going in, I'm totally fine with it. But you got to hit the draft. You don't have a choice. You put yourself in a position by getting rid of so many players. Again, a lot of them always injured, and they were going to cost a lot of money. So I get all that. Just, if you're going to use the draft to replenish, got to hit. So this is an important.
First 5 picks were defense. Like, they didn't get cute, right? DN, D tackle, 2 D tackles, a linebacker, a nickel corner. And then, of course, once you get into day 3, then you have the receiver selection and the running backs, which I'm totally fine with. I wasn't sure if they were going to go receiver or running back at all, but they didn't, there were a lot of people out there in Twitter or TV land. Oh, maybe how many times did you see? Maybe the Niners draft tight end Tyler Warren. Maybe they'll make Tetra, McMillan out of Arizona State, a receiver, their first round pick in it or second. It never made sense.
It was never going to happen.
Other than, you don't want to reach for a need, but at the same time, if you like a player in the in the third round and or he's a fourth round talent, let's say, but you like him and you're not convinced he's going to be there in the fourth, I'm okay to reach. Like, don't reach by 3 or 4 rounds, but there's no guarantee the player is going to be there when you come back the next round, or you can't trade up to get him. They attacked their needs. And, if you want to say running back 3 was a need with Jordan James, maybe. If you want to say receiver was a need with Watkins from Ole Miss, maybe, given, Juwan Jennings might not be here beyond this year, just, given cost and other things that they need to do. So they didn't make any head scratching picks. And even the quarterback they took in the 7th round from Indiana, Rourke, coming off of an ACL, that's such a Niner thing to do. It's not as head scratching when this is someone that could potentially have long-term QB2 value. And if he doesn't play at all this year, I think his contract tolls. So 2026 will be the first of his 4 years if they keep him on IR. So there wasn't a lot of, in the past, like you and I have talked about it, the Niners have made like luxury picks, things that like, oh, they didn't need it this year. Maybe it's for next year or the year after. These were, we need you this year, guys. And we need you guys in the years beyond as well. So looks good on paper. That the draft I would give a solid B2. Now it's just going to be all performance and how fast can everybody get up to speed.
Kind of switching to special teams, the Brent Boyer hire. Just listening to a talk in offseason, press conferences, you don't hear from him too much during the offseason. He's saying all the right things, man. He seems to be kind of a little bit off. He seems a little bit not angry, but seems like he has a little bit of an edge to him, which I like. And he takes his special teams job very seriously, again, which I like. Mm-hmm. One of the things they did in free agency to seem like it was to bolster that special teams with some acquisitions. The overarching thing, though, and you know where I'm going with this, the overarching theme of special teams is Jake Moody.
Yep.
And what are they going to do with Jake Moody? Is Jake Moody going to make the roster? Is the competition brought in just to push him? How would you feel if Moody is a day one kicker? And I mean, how confident, I guess I'll ask you, are you that the special teams for the first time in a long time, because it's been bad for a couple years.
Bad.
They've been one of the worst teams on special teams for a while. Been at the bottom, so you can't really go any lower. But then I say that, and then it could be even worse next year. Yeah. But how are you feeling about special teams, just based on the Brent Boyer hire, and just the fact that they, supposedly brought in competition for Jake Moody?
Boyer's been fun to listen to, and I think the one thing that stuck out hearing him speak was his job as a coach in his mind is getting his players in the right mindset, the right aggressiveness, the right confidence to perform their special teams duties at the way that they need to, being disciplined, not over pursuing, getting out of your head. If you're Moody or a kick returner, punt returner, Wisnowski, whoever it's going to be, then with a great youth movement in the draft the past 2 years, and they bring in a 40-year-old long snapper. But if it's someone that's going to, steady the ship, although I'm not sure the issues that they had with Tabor Pepper, if any. We know Debo had one, but Debo's not on the team anymore. All I'm asking right now is, can we be a middle of the third special teams unit, right? Somewhere between 11 and 21, something like that. Punt returns, a little bit more. And that's that shouldn't be asking a whole lot, right? Kick return, punt return. They brought in some competition for Jacob Cowing with their last pick in the draft, a receiver out of Montana. Greg Joseph comes in to challenge Moody. You mentioned how I would feel if Jake Moody was the week 1 kicker. I would be okay. I mean, he was statistically significantly better before the ankle injury, right? Like that. I mean, that's a fact, before and after.
True.
Now, did they bring him back too soon? Who knows? I mean, but if you're going to be out there to play, if you're healthy enough to play, you should play and play the way you were playing before you got injured. What I think they should do that they haven't done in the past couple of years is just keep a friggin' kicker on the practice squad. You don't need a 4th wide receiver who's never going to see the field, or 4 offensive linemen. All 4 are probably not going to see the field. Designate one position on your practice squad for Greg Joseph or whoever. So if Jake Moody is struggling, you can have a quick hook. Maybe you don't elevate that kicker on a random Sunday, but at least you have him in your back pocket, that if Moody's struggling, you deactivate Moody, you elevate your kicker for the next week, and go from there. I think when we talk about Kyle overcorrecting, if Joseph doesn't win the kicker spot outright, I would anticipate to see him or another kicker on the practice squad to have and use as a moment's notice.
To me, the whole thing with Moody is, and I came up, me and Sterling Bennett had this conversation. Like, if he cost you a couple games early in the season, he has to go.
He's got to go.
He's got to go. Like, there's no rational explanation. I'm sick of John saying we have faith in Jake. I don't have faith in Jake as a fan. I have zero faith in him. I think, did his injury hamper him? Probably. I think he's just mentally weak. He's a mentally weak person. It was shown last year. He got in his own head, and once he did, he was toast. He couldn't make a kick to save his life last year, especially late in the season. What was it, the Bucks game? Did he miss like 4 kicks or something like that? Yeah. I see these signings, and I like how people do this with their channels. Like, they'll be like breaking news, and then they'll have the kicker picture, and it'll be like, "Is Jake Moody about to be?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, yes." And then I realize it's just a thumbnail to attract viewers, which it did. Like, I got pulled into that one. Like, oh, I thought they were cutting him, but no, it's the overarching question. Does the guy we brought in have any chance to make the starting team, the starting roster as a kicker? I wish. People talk about Moody can hit 70 yards in practice. That's great. Practice doesn't count. I don't care. None of that stuff matters to me. That's like quarterbacks who can throw the ball over the crossbar, but they can't hit a wide open receiver. Like, none of that crap means anything. Who cares? I don't care how strong your arm is if you can't you can't play with the rush in your face and time running out and all those things. None of that stuff matters to me. So
at least Moody's first 2 games are on the road. Not to say if you want to miss, you rather miss on the road than at home, because I'm sure more teams are fed up with him than not. So if he comes back home for that Arizona game week 3 and starts missing a kick or 2, the boos are going to rain down on him, a la Alex Smith during that Monday night game where we thought he was going to get pulled by Mike Singletary, and he came back because everyone was chanting, "We want Carr," with Derek Carr, David Carr, with the older Carr. People were chanting for that. That's who people wanted. I mean, the only problem is once your kicker, gets into a slump during a game, you have no other choice. I mean, I guess you can start going for it on 4th down, but if he can iron things out, he looks good in practice. Preseason games don't mean anything. I mean, I wonder how decisively Joseph would have to beat out Moody. Like, if they each kick 10 field goals, let's say, does Joseph have to go 9 for 10 and Moody have to be 6 for 10 to get cut? Like, what does that delta have to look like for Kyle to be, sorry, we can't go with you? Because if it's close, I'm sure they're going to give it to Moody.
I don't. Somebody was it Sterling? He says he doesn't think Kyle likes Jake, and he doesn't think Boyer likes him either. But they're kind of in a corner because of where they drafted him a couple years ago. It's that kind of situation. Hell, I hope there's a bunch of opportunities to kick field goals in the preseason, and I hope Moody misses a whole bunch of them, and then he's not here on this team. I don't want him on this team. I don't like him as a kicker.
I mean, listen, Trey Lance was a 1st-round pick. He only lasted 2 years before they got rid of him. If we're saying a 3rd-round kicker is going to get his job because he was a 3rd-round pick, nah. Like, he's got to go. If Trey Lance can go, Jake Moody can go for sure, especially with the peanuts that he's making. I think everyone's enticed by the leg, right? This is the Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's generational. Big quarterback. Ooh, he can make it from 55 plus versus maybe Joseph's doesn't have as strong of a leg, but more accurate inside of 50. That's Brock Purdy. So Kyle, don't get enamored by the wow stats when that wow feature has been more of a God damn it feature than a thumbs up feature.
Right. Let's talk draft without getting too specific. What my overall feeling was with the draft was they did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
I felt that they addressed defense pretty thoroughly. I would have loved to have seen another edge. I wish they could have drafted a guy like Mike Green, an actual legit pass rusher that has some moves. But the character concerns are through the roof, so that was never going to happen. So I mean, I was okay with that. I thought the drafting of a running back was par for the course. I thought a drafting of a wide receiver was par for the course. Um, the draft went about as well as I think it could have gone. Speaking with other people, again, Sterling Bennett, Dre Area Sports, they thought there was some reaches in there
Mhm.
with Siegel and with no, was it Siegel? I forgot exactly. I know they weren't at the linebacker that they drafted to replace
Oh, Martin. Yeah, Nick Martin.
yeah, a lot of people thought he would have been there later, and it all comes down to the 49ers board and where they have people. The Niners maybe
Mhm.
have people ranked differently than other teams, and that's the dangerous part about these mock drafts is they fall in love with all these players that they think the 49ers are going to draft, and then when they don't, they're like super like they cannot get over it when they're talking about the post draft and stuff. But what was your overall feeling? I mean, you said that they've had a B plus B minus kind of offseason. How would you rate the draft?
I
Similar grade?
Yeah, I think the draft would be, I think, a solid B. I did so many mock drafts leading up to the draft, just a good way to kill 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes.
And the NFL draft never falls outside of like the beyond the obvious picks, the way that mock drafts fall. And it's so funny because you just have like a random dude or group of people that are setting the big board for these mock draft simulator sites. They're not like that's just their opinion. And then you have 32 teams have different opinions on how players are going to fall. Taking 2 hits on at D tackle made a lot of sense. D end in the first or first or second round, but it wound up being the first round, made a lot of sense. A cornerback, I mean, they went smaller. I thought they might have drafted an out like a bigger 6'1" outside corner instead of Upston Stout because you have the flexibility with Demo to play the slot. They brought in that cornerback from the Seahawks. That's 5'10". He could play the slot. So the fact that they went like slot specific and everyone's already saying he's a Quan Williams clone. Like, yeah, he could be a Quan Williams clone. CJ West can be a DJ Jones clone because of the body types. Talent wise remains to be seen, right?
Yeah.
Quarterback late. Kyle was going to take a quarterback. Everything kind of made sense except to me not attempting to draft a tight end 3 because I think they were in a perfect situation for we knew George was going to get extended. So Kittle getting extended, you bring in Luke Farrell on a 3-year deal. It's almost a perfect opportunity to draft a tight end 3 that could be developmental, right? He's probably not going to see the field that much. He's got to be a blocker before a receiver, but you can get some young legs, a young body in there. Instead, they didn't. They brought Ross Dwelly back. And tackle, offensive line, I know was the biggest for everybody. They waited until the 7th round to take Connor Colby out of Iowa. They could have taken a swing tackle at some point because there's no succession plan right now for Trent Williams, who's not guaranteed to play beyond this year. He may want to retire. You never know. And with the money Jalen Moore got, there's no way they're going to be able to resign Colton McKivitz. So they better hope that picking up free agents Andre Dillard and what was it, Nicolas Petit-Frere from the Titans, that they can work out as a swing tackle and maybe be a really cheap right tackle alternative to Colton McKivitz next year, because that seemed like to be the biggest position, tackle, that you would need to draft and groom, and they didn't do that. And now they might be in the position of next year having to draft it, like absolutely having to draft a tackle early, like they had to draft D-line early this year. I'm not saying that it's a detriment to have a rookie in there. I mean, Mike McGlinchey started as a rookie. I know people aren't huge fans of him, but that just seemed to be a miss looking at their roster and looking at expiring contracts.
The thing too is when they made that pick, they joked about it on social media, and I thought that was really kind of bad taste. Like, it's a major need on your team, and
Hey, we finally took a lineman. Like yeah, I
Jed
remember
York,
that.
like,
Like,
ha
really?
ha ha! I think we're going to take an offensive lineman. I'm like, I don't see the humor in it, considering Brock Purdy's taken some pretty nasty shots last year. Got his elbow dinged again. Like, I love the Mac Jones backup quarterback, but you never really want to see your backup
No.
quarterback ever. It usually means your season's going down the drain, unless your backup is Steve Young and your starter's Joe Montana, and then that's a whole other thing. But
Yep.
man, yeah, offensive line not being selected till late was probably the biggest issue I had. Um, I mean, just everything really went the way that we thought it was gonna. The running back pick, a lot of people are comparing him to the guy that left, Jordan Mason.
Mhm.
So
How did
the
you feel
Niners and
how did you feel about the quarterback pick,
the
Aaron? Like, what
quarterback pick I thought was a luxury pick that they didn't need to make.
yeah.
I thought they did one of those things that they always do, which is we know more than you. We're in the draft room. You're not. Shut up, sit down, and just accept this ridiculous pick of a guy who's not going to play this year and is going to be rehabbing, and he might turn into a quarterback too. Or we could have used that pick to maybe draft another offensive lineman or something. I don't know. It was they do this every year. You know that. They do
Mhm.
it every year. They make these picks where they think they're being like they're ahead of everybody and they're catching, they're finding out something that nobody else has seemed to have seen in the draft, this unpolished gem that's just hiding in plain sight. Like, yeah, you got it with Purdy. That's like a 1 in a 1
Yeah.
trillion chance it's happening. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the pick. No.
It's, you know what, and I think everybody kind of agreed, at least folks that know more about college players than I do, that if Rourke wasn't injured, he would have probably gone maybe fourth, fifth round. All right, so they got a fourth or fifth round quarterback in the seventh. You want to call that value? That's fine. What it's making me realize now is when I said earlier of, oh, maybe they don't keep 3 quarterbacks on the active roster. Maybe Mordecai is on the practice squad, and that's still a possibility. But so Curtis Rourke's not going to be healthy this season, I doubt. But if he is obviously a quarterback option, a backup quarterback option for the future, that means in 2026, your QBs are Purdy, Mac Jones, and Curtis Rourke. 3 QBs on your 53 in 2026. So I guess there's a good chance there's going to be 3 QBs on the 53 with Tanner Mordecai this year. So, which I don't know. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but again, it's kind of that value of what would you rather have, a QB3 that, unless it's Brock Purdy, if you're down to your third quarterback, your season's probably over, not 99 times out of 100, or, saving that extra spot for a lineman, a linebacker, or corner, positions that have a much higher attrition rate, than QBs generally do. We'll see.
What do you think of we're talking draft. What did you think of the Mac since Cheapto brought it up? What did you think of the Mac Jones signing? I thought it was a good signing. I didn't mind it at all.
For the cost that he got for 2 years, and I know it came up on screen, he's only going to be here for a year. It's possible they signed him for 2 years. I think, that whole discussion of Mac Jones or Trey Lance, anybody that still thinks that Shanahan was talked out of Mac Jones for Trey Lance, I think Kyle's got final say on all roster decisions, right? And he wanted a Josh Allen type of quarterback. I truly believe it after the Buffalo game a couple of years ago. Obviously didn't work out for a variety of reasons. Mac Jones had a good first year. Things devolved in New England, in addition to the talent not being there, stepped in for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, played okay, didn't play fantastic, but he's the definition right now of a backup QB, right? If he needs to come in for a game, 2 or 3, can he keep you afloat? Can he win 1 of 2? Can he win 2 of 3? Yes. And he's got a good amount of starting experience, good enough arm, a little bit more, not as mobile as Brock, but a little bit more mobile than people can think. And it's what Kyle likes, right? Good processor. He's an accurate quarterback. I think he's a clear step up over Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. More athletic, but he was putting the ball in harm's way. Feel better about the backup situation with Mac Jones. And again, he's no tremendous quarterback, but might be the best backup that they've had since Kyle's been here, outside of Jimmy Garoppolo the year Trey Lance was handed the keys.
He's got starting experience.
Yeah.
He's going to be coached well, and he's going to have talent around him. So those 3 things to me is just like you said. If he's here, if it's 2 games and he's stepping in. In reality, we don't want to see him all year. We want Brock to be healthy.
Right.
Brock has had an issue staying healthy because he's taken some pretty nasty shots. He's not the biggest guy. He's slight in stature, which is one of my biggest fears. But then again, you see big quarterbacks get hurt too, so it's like whatever at that point. Let's transition to all the signings that have happened. This has been before we get into the specifics about Brock. This has been probably one of the better off seasons they've had
Mhm.
in recent memory of just like getting done, man. Like they said a lot of stuff after the season, and a lot of times, the end of the season press conference, especially if they end up, not making the playoffs, there's a lot of things said about what's going to change and what needs to happen, and then it doesn't happen, right? They got a new D coordinator, they got a new special teams coordinator, they got rid of Debo, they made a lot of moves. I mean, they clean house on coaching staff and in the on the roster. So like they for once I kind of feel like the Niners, and who am I, right? But I'm like, they didn't lie to me. They told the truth for a change. They did what they said they were going to do. They didn't chicken out at the end and give in like they've done with some of these contracts that they've had go into training camp, and then they go and they overpay people that they really never wanted to pay the
Mhm.
amount that they wanted to pay them, like Brandon Ayuk, for instance, or getting more money to Trent Williams. Uh, they didn't want to do that last year. They were kind of forced to. So I feel like the Niners almost like reclaimed the front office, kind of reclaim their starting position versus what the players want. Like they did. I felt like the organization wise, I feel better about them this offseason than I've had in a long time.
I do too, and they got back to what they were doing early on in the Kyle and John regime of signing players earlier in the offseason, signing a player a year early to get him on a discount. I mean, think about how quickly Jimmy Garoppolo was signed to the extension after the season ended in 2018. I mean, it happened quickly. And even some of like the first extension for, I mean, Warner's extension, Kittle's extension lasted maybe a little bit longer into like early summer-ish, early training camp. But they were usually, I mean, they knocked Demo out mid-season. And I think a lot of people are forgetting
They
about that
never do that.
extension. They never do that, but they knocked it out. They got him at like what, 13, 15 million per. And it was a good signing for both sides and a drama-free sign. I mean, we don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it just kind of happened. One day, Demo signed. Everybody was on Brock Purdy watch. Everybody was wondering, would Kittle get extended? Were they going to trade him? Were they going to draft Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland? Were they going to replace him? And that was never in the cards. And then once those two signed, then it became, what are they going to do with Warner? Because he's got 2 years left, and they signed him as well. It takes two to tango. The whole Brandon Ayuk and Nick Bosa stuff. Who knows? They could have been starting their conversations in March, in April, and they just could not come to an agreement, or neither side felt the urgency to get a deal done until that deadline is coming. George seems like that type of personality, that he wasn't trying to get maybe every single dollar, although he did reset the market because he got 100,000 more per year annually than McBride from Arizona did. Same with Warner. And then obviously Brock coming out saying, like, we read reports that his camp asked for 65 per year, which I'm not sure if I believe, but you got to ask for X amount higher to get what you want to get. So no fault on Brock's
Right.
agent if he actually did that. Getting 53 million, we've been talking for a while. He's going to get low to mid 50s, and it wasn't important enough to him to get more than Trevor or Jordan Love or Jared Goff, or Tua in the 55 range. That wasn't important. Like some QBs may be ego monsters. He wasn't. He got 181 guaranteed, which is a crap load of money, 256, 265 overall, which is a crap load of money and a lot paid out in the first 3 years. They did right by three of their core foundational players. And if you want to say they did right by McCaffrey and Trent Williams last year by giving them the money that they did, okay, it happens really late, and they probably gave more than they should have. And they still have a lot of cap space, about $40 million. They're going to roll over a lot. And then they're going to have questions next year. The biggest one probably being Jawan Jennings, which I'm going to hold off any opinion on, at least for now and for this show. But they did what they said they were going to do, that they had to clean cap. They couldn't sign some players. They made a run at Dre late, but everything they did and didn't do to me made sense. And now they just have to put it together, on the field. Because even though this all makes sense and looks good now, if it's not looking good on the field in September or October, fans will revolt.
One thing I'll say about Larry, guys, at least he's a 49ers fan and he makes content. There's a lot of people that are, whether you agree
Yeah.
with his takes or not, there's a lot of people that put out 49ers content that hate the 49ers and love to see their demise, and all they do is misery. They're misery merchants.
Misery merchants.
That's all they do is talk about all this, doomsday scenario stuff every single day, every single week, off season, during the season. At least he's a fan. I
He is.
don't agree with everything Larry says, but Larry has a lot of knowledge because Larry
He
was
does.
a scout.
Yeah.
I just, sometimes, you can not like somebody's personality, but agree with their talent.
Right. And
And that's how I feel about a lot of people.
for the folks that are doing the daily grind, posting things multiple dozens of times a day, 49er stuff, or if someone like Larry, other people that are, San Francisco Giants, Golden
Yeah,
State Warriors,
they're like, this is their job too.
that's their job. They're putting out a lot of stuff. So you'd have to imagine, right, for any of these hardcore content creators, if it's their job or a supplemental source of income, a 50% hit rate on what they're saying is probably pretty good, right? Like you're putting so much stuff out there. It's not all going to be gold, and it's probably not all going to be silver or even bronze. There's going to be some, participation trophies in terms of the quality of the content. And that's okay. I just always find it curious. And I'm not actually even going to say any specific person, but the folks out there that have this as their job, that theoretically know more about the 49ers than, let's say, we do, how they can make such bad takes at times, right? Like that's the things that kind of boggles the mind. It's like, okay, I
because
guess
I think there's a lot of people that I think with a lot of that kind of stuff, there's a market for it, and that's why they get all the views. There's a lot of people that like that kind of content, which is like TMZ type stuff, like every single day. Like, is Brock Purdy overrated? Was getting rid of Trey Lance the biggest mistake this franchise has ever made? That kind of, just like overly dramatic, overly like, but people eat it up. If people eat it up and they eat up certain thumbnails that bring you into the video, then
sure,
what are you gonna do?
I know.
I gave up on trying to make videos of live streams for views about 2.5 years ago because the market was so infused with so many people. So yeah, just it is what it is. The thing I think about this whole thing with free agency, or excuse me, with the contracts this year, is that like the funny thing is like people talk about what Brock doesn't deserve or shouldn't have got as much as he got. And they keep talking about all these quarterbacks that are supposedly better than him because they have more physical traits, but yet haven't accomplished nearly the things that Brock Purdy has accomplished. But they're still worth more money than Brock, even though Brock's if you look at a resume, has done more in his career than a lot of these guys have, but deserves way less money. People keep falling in love with the size and the arm strength and all these physical traits. Like the guy, what's his name from the Chargers?
Herbert.
Everybody loves Herbert. Oh, I wish I had Herbert as quarterback of the 49ers. Herbert don't ever win anything. He doesn't win ever. He's just a really good-looking, tall quarterback with some acne on his face who can throw a ball a quarter mile. But money should be based, to me, just like I believe in people should be hired for jobs based on qualifications only and not any other thing. I believe quarterbacks or any player contract-wise, their numbers and what they think they are owed should be based on accomplishment.
Yep.
And that's it. And that's how it always should be. That's how I believe it. And if you want to do that, then Brock got about what he deserves.
No, I'm with you. And I talked about this on my show earlier in the week, and I'll just quickly go over it. So he's tied with Goff for average annual value, 53 million a year, 7th in the league, 8th in the league in total guaranteed money, 12th among quarterbacks in fully guaranteed money. And I've said for a while, Brock is somewhere between the 7th and 12th best quarterback in the league, right? And in terms of accomplishments, players that are making more than him, he's accomplished more than Dak and Love and Lawrence and Tua and Herbert. Justin Herbert had one of his, or probably his most efficient year this past year with the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. His touchdown to interception ratio was ridiculously low. I was going to say high, but low is the good one. And he's not throwing for 40, 300 yards. He's not throwing 35 touchdowns. He's playing efficient football. It's not sexy. And the Chargers made the playoffs. Again, they lost in the first round, but Herbert's only been to the playoffs twice, lost both times. I'm sure people are going to have an exception with what I'm about to say next, but in terms of quarterbacks that Brock has comparable accomplishments to, Joe Burrow, they've each been to a Super Bowl and another championship game. Goff, they've each been to a Super Bowl and another championship game. Josh Allen has not been to a Super Bowl, has an MVP. He's a generational talent. I'm not saying talent, guys. I'm saying comparable accomplishments. Lamar has never been to a Super Bowl, 2 MVPs. Generational talent, not comparing the arms, the legs, the anythings. I'm just saying when you look at the accomplishments resume-wise, Brock is in the ballpark. You can't tell me Brock's across the street. You can't tell me Brock's in a hockey arena and Lamar's in a football stadium. You can't tell me he's in another state. They're in the ballpark. What Brock got money-wise is so fair. And if you want to say he's a tad underpaid, I will give you that more so than saying he's overpaid. And the way that I think the Niners can get out of the contract, he has $165 million coming the first 3 years. They can get out of the contract pretty cleanly after year 3. I'm sure they're not going to unless Brock drastically falls off. But all those players that are making heavy money above, near, or beneath Brock, his accomplishments are right in line. And again, you guys have to show me historically a quarterback out there that has not performed at a high level without weapons around them. It's literally an impossibility.
This is a good point. He said Burrow's really good, but when you're paying him Chase and T. Higgins that much money,
Exactly.
becomes hamstrung by those contracts. Yeah. No, I thought Brock got exactly where what he deserved to get. And I think his side came into that negotiation. You're never going to come into a negotiation and say, yeah, I only want $44 million. Because that's all I think I deserve. Of course you're going in with a stupid high number. That's why they call it a negotiation. The team has their number. Your agent has this number. And most of the time, if not all the time, they meet in the middle. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Brock's side probably came to the table with the argument we just made about accomplishments and accomplishments to comparable competition, like quarterbacks that you would consider kind of in his tier. He's done the same or more. Nobody's saying that he's Josh Allen. Nobody's saying he's Lamar Jackson. Nobody's saying he's Joe Burrow. Nobody's saying that. But if that isn't an option for you as a fan, who's your option? Who are you going to pay? Who are you going to bring in? You're not drafting a quarterback in the draft this year. It was one of the worst quarterback drafts, at least right now, that we've seen in quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, if you're going to come in with a take that he doesn't deserve it and that they need a different quarterback, first of all, show me who.
Mm-hmm.
And then
well, people are going to say Mac Jones. People are going to immediately point to Mac Jones. Then there was a narrative earlier in the offseason of, is Mac Jones leverage against Purdy getting an extension because maybe Kyle really wanted him and now they sign. I mean, it's all nonsense, but that was people's answer.
Brock, I think it's cool that Brock knows about what a lot of people say about him, and he thinks it's funny. I'm cool that he's, man. If there was one person that just says all the right things at their press conference, it isn't cocky, but is self-confident in himself, like he believes in himself, it's Brock. I wish he could just grow like maybe 50 more pounds of muscle, and get some sort of grip for his hands in wet games, man. We'd be set. I love Brock Purdy as a quarterback. I really believe in him. Now, here's a question for you, that Sterling Bennett put to me, and I think maybe me and Dre may have talked about this too. You've tied yourself to Brock Purdy now as a coach and as a GM. Sterling asked me if it fails and they fall short of the mark with Brock the next 3 to 4 years, 5 years, should they get rid of the GM and the coach? I said yes. Do you agree, or do you have a different take on that?
No, I was looking down. I'm like, what's the year that we're in right now? Because I just had a mental block. Well,
125.
Kyle's contract only runs through 2027. Brock's extension doesn't kick in until 2026, but there's some cap hit that got, pushed onto this year, which is a little over 9 million. So if they, the window for me for San Francisco, I think I said, is the next 2 to 3 years with before McCaffrey gets too old, Kittle, Warner, the window is open for the Niners to make playoff runs the next 3 years. Does it mean they're going to win the Super Bowl every year this year? I don't know. I hope so. That'd be awesome. But with the window with this, we're going to call it this next group of players. This group of players before they age out is 3 years. And if they don't win in the next 3 years and Kyle or John don't get extended, I can see them, yes, going in another direction. I can see a head coach coming in, potentially not believing in Brock and wanting to maybe release him or keep him for a year if the cap is too prohibitive and release him after 2027. I think that's completely on the table. I don't know what Kyle Shanahan has to do this year outside of winning a Super Bowl to get an extension through maybe, I don't know, 2030. I'm just making up a number, but I think that's a distinct possibility. Now, if you're like, it's degrees, but it's degrees of winning, right? Like how, if they're consistently an 11 win team, 10, 11 win team, divisional round, championship game, or Super Bowl, do you still let go of Shanahan? Look how long Mike Tomlin's been there. He's never been under 500, but he can't win a playoff game. And he's still there. I know it might be a different philosophy with the Rooneys versus, the York family, but that's the other thing you have to weigh too, is if you're going to make that decision to move on from Kyle, who's going to be there in 2 to 3 years? That's the hot coordinator or whatever that you're going to, pick up that you see as an improvement. And, if they're 6-11 the next 3 years, that's an easy decision. But if they're 11-6, 12-5, have a 10-7 year, are you really going to make that move just to shake things up? I think it's a really interesting debate and discussion, especially, since we don't know what the next 2 or 3 years are going to look like, record wise.
Man, if they go into next year and they have a 6-11 season, I feel like something like John Lynch could be.
Yes. If it's not an injury ravaged, the way I'm looking at this past season, I don't know if you would agree with this or not. 6-11, right? I would say you could point or blame Nick Sorensen for 2 losses, or Nick Sorensen could be responsible for 2 losses, let's say, just because he sucked.
He was bad.
Special teams, a loss. Injuries, maybe 2 losses. So that, let's say, is 5. That maybe if they're a healthy-ish team, maybe they're a 10 or 11 win team, right? Versus 6. I still think with the talent that they had on the field, that's still remaining on the field, they should have won maybe 8 games. Like 6-11, like was just really bad. But it got them a top 11 pick in Michael Williams.
Right. I felt like and I never like to say this about athletes because I'm not an athlete, never been a high end physical athlete. I'm a normal white guy who can't jump. I felt they at some points last year, I felt they quit. I felt physically, mentally, spiritually, they were gone. That Buffalo game to me was
Buffalo and Green Bay was
the Buffalo and Green Bay games to me. And people are going to be like, oh, how are you going to talk about people that you could never do it? Of course. Yes, they're awesome. They're unbelievable athletes. But they said it in the offseason. They talked about it ad nauseum about how refreshed everybody feels this offseason. Yes. How energetic and just ready to run through a freaking door, everybody. They said all they talked about is how tired everybody was, how people didn't feel rested. They came into last year and it was like they lost the Super Bowl and then they a couple weeks and then they were right back at OTAs, right back in the building. And it was like they never got a chance to really get over anything, get any rest. So there's that. If they have that and have a bad season, man, like they're saying all the right things in the offseason right now, and I'm really, really trying to like be super positive because I'm not a misery merchant. Okay. I'm not I'm not a rage baiter. I'm not a grifter. I love the 49ers. I have for 35 years. I'm a realistic person though. And I have to be real. this is an important draft. They really got to hit, and this is an important year. And like I said, if they go and they have another really bad season this year, and they're healthy, and they have a new DC, and they have a new special teams coordinator,
Mhm.
and all this stuff, and they still come out and they play poorly, someone's got to fall on the sword.
If it's not, yeah, if it's not an injury plagued season like last year, 2020, if they're relatively healthy, that means they should solve some, some of, if not all of the red zone issues. Salah coming in should solve a lot of the defensive issues, especially with, combating the inexperience of Nick Sorensen, but now you have inexperience of players. Is he going to mix up the blitz a little bit more, right? We don't know what Michael Williams is. Alfred Collins isn't a pass rusher. CJ West isn't a pass rusher. Evan Anderson isn't a pass rusher inside. So they're going to have to manufacture pressure more this year than they have in the past couple of years. They can't this, and we keep saying it, right? Rush 4, drop 7, rush. That's all they do. They can't do it this year, right? They really can't.
They have to be multiple in their fronts.
Yep.
It all that works if you have the 2019 defensive line.
Right.
When you had Buckner, Armstead, D Ford, and Nick Bosa healthy, rushing you in 20, dude. I mean, it was an unbelievable. The pressure was there. The coverage was sticky. It was like the perfect combination. They're not going to have that this year. They don't really have a lot of true pass rushers other than Nick.
Right.
Nick's the only real guy with moves and counter moves. Larry, I heard Larry Krueger talking about Michael Williams. He doesn't have a whole lot of moves. He's just a really big guy who can, move the pocket just like the rest of them can. I feel like run defense is what they care more about than anything this year. And then essentially what you do is you put teams into predictable passing downs.
Right.
And you can do all sorts of stuff with coverage and blitzing and zone blitz and all sorts of different fronts. So they have to get that. They can't be every drive was like 2nd and 4.
I know.
Every single play.
Well, even run defense has to be schemed up too. Like they're going to have to manufacture, at least in that first month plus, while the rookies are getting their feet wet, better gap integrity, right? Being able to stop the run better. Just because you're bringing in bigger bodies than what you had doesn't mean automatically, especially if they're still playing a wide 9 and you have a potential rookie linebacker running mate for Fred Warner. It could be a recipe for, it could look worse before it looks better. I think, the saving grace right now is the players that left were older, injury prone, and did not play a lot last year. It's not like you're losing all this production from Dre, all this production from Hargrave, all this production from Hufanga. They weren't on the field. It didn't really matter. Travarius Ward missed the middle block of the field due to the season due to the tragedy. But the fourth place, healthy-ish team with a 4th place schedule, and teams may be worse than we think, better than we think. Who knows till everything starts playing out? All I do know is looking at the schedule last year, going into the season, that Chiefs game at home, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, felt like, all right, shit, there's 3 losses. You look at the schedule this year, is there any game we feel about like that? Do you feel like it's a loss automatically going to Seattle, going to the Rams, going to the Texans, going to the Bucs?
When me and Sterling did the prediction for the schedule, I did predict us having trouble with the Cardinals. I had us losing both games to the Cardinals.
I had him in 11-6 record wise. What did you
I think I had them at did I have them at 12 and was it 12-5 or 11-6? I was right around the same.
Yeah.
Right around the same record. I feel like their youth is going to catch them in some games. I mean, they already struggle against, and then I think they split with the Rams. So that's 3 losses right there. And then maybe the Tampa game, an experienced quarterback, he's not all that great. We'll see, man. Like they have a chance to open up the season 4-0, 3-1,
I have them losing at Seattle week 1. I hate to say it.
You have them losing. We had them both winning.
I think I'm still so mentally scarred from like the past decade of the Legion of Boom of going up to Seattle. At least it's not a night game. And like I said earlier, an early Sam Darnold might be better than a more experienced, Sam Darnold in that offense, even though it's not Minnesota. 11-6. Listen, we don't know what the Rams are going to be. 11-6 isn't going to get them the number 1 seed. They would probably have to win 13 games. And we're
I
getting
don't think they win the division.
There.
I think the Niners are a wild card team. I think they get one of the last spots.
I'm not totally sold on the Rams yet.
Well, they're a Stafford injury away from being.
No, that's exactly it. All we're talking about is, as in a way, doom and gloom Niner fans is, well, if this team gets hurt again, if the Rams lose Stafford, then Jimmy steps in, who's a better backup QB than most, but the physics of that offense changes significantly from what McVay wants to do. Yes, they traded one 32-year-old receiver for another with Kupp and Devontae Adams, and I'm sure that'll work out relatively well. But listen, the Rams could still be a 10-win team, and the Niners could be an 11-win team and win the West. It could be flipped, vice versa. But
yeah, the Rams don't have this all-star. They have a really good defensive line, but
no, they're a solid team. I'm not totally convinced yet. Seattle was a surprising 10-7 non-playoff team. Arizona's always going to flirt with 7 or 8 wins, but the Niners have trouble with mobile quarterbacks. The roster, at Houston, at Tampa, at the Rams, at Seattle. I think I actually even have them. I think I have them 3-3 in the division. I do, and I losing the away games just because I'm trying to be a non super crazy homer. But I think the floor, again, healthy-ish. The floor is 10-6. And I think the ceiling is 12-5, 13-4 if they get ridiculously lucky. So somewhere in the middle, I think 11-6 is fair. Because they're going to win some games.
Philadelphia. I still think Philadelphia is going to be the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, yeah.
I think until proven otherwise, I think the Commanders will be really good this year. Although they could slide back a little bit, a little regression from the starter rookie second-year quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Rams are going to be pretty good. I'm trying to think of other teams.
Detroit will win the North.
Detroit,
but they took a step back last year. They had a really good season. Couldn't get out of the divisional round at home. It's hard when you're the hunted. It's hard.
It is The Niners were the hunted for years, and they did really well. And it was just always like this weird stuff that would happen, an injury to a quarterback or dropped interception or getting a Super Bowl, and they cannot, for some reason, find a way to score more than 20 points against the Kansas City Chiefs or whatever. So, dude, I'm looking forward to the season. We have a kind of ways to go. We got the summer. It isn't even summer yet. I'm going to enjoy this summer because I mentally rushed the season to happen after last year.
I know.
And I didn't get a chance to enjoy the summer. And then we lived through a miserable winter of the 49ers sucking. So I'm not going to, what's the word? I'm not going to live in the future for the expense of the present.
Yep.
As I, enjoy the summer, relax. Everything's going to be great. Hopefully everybody's healthy and life's good. And
you know how quick the season goes, man. You get excited for week 1 and you turn around. It's like week 10, 12, and then the season's over. Playoffs or not, goes fast.
Strawberry Rex, welcome to the stream. We're about to get out of here, but she says that the Commanders also had a really easy schedule last year. True. I think they're a playoff team, but closer to 9-2.
It's a tougher division than the NFC West, right? Philly's going to be really good. Dallas now with Pickens, and if that can stay healthy, they're not and the Giants always seem to play Washington tough for whatever reason. So would either of us be shocked if Washington was third in the division this year? If Dallas takes that's a tough division, the East. I'd be more shocked if the Niners were third in the West.
I think the 49ers split the division this year. I do not think they win it. I still think the Rams win the division. But I think the 49ers are a wild card team in the playoffs. The reason I keep coming around to what I'm saying is it's the lack of experience on defense. They're not going to have Brandon Ayuk for probably 2.5 months. Can they figure out a way to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy? It was one of my topics. We never really got to it, but Christian McCaffrey, everything's great now in the offseason, but can he make it a whole season?
Well, hey, Jordan James, welcome to the team. If McCaffrey and Grendo don't get hurt, you don't see the field at all.
Yeah.
Glad to have you.
That's the one thing about Kyle and our running back coach Bobby Stewart. Like they are just obsessed with running people into the ground, man. I don't get it.
I know.
Yeah, Robinson's not going to be here for the first part of the year for
Yep.
suspension. And that Niners offense in the first couple weeks, me, Dre, and Sterling were talking about, man, they're gonna have to run the ball like a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, Pearsall, Jennings. I don't know who's going to be your number 3 if Robinson isn't there. I guess I don't know. Is it Cowing by default? Do they give the nod to Isaiah Hodgins or Russell Gage? Does Kyle lean on more of a veteran? I don't think the rookie Watkins is going to get some significant playing time. That'll be interesting if he's going to be suspended for a couple of games. Going back to the youth on defense, the inexperience of a lot of players. Just have to stay in conference and look at the model that the Rams and the Eagles put forth, right? Eagles, very young defense. Vic Fangio comes in, puts it all together. Now, Kellen Moore had a lot to say on what the offense was doing for Philadelphia, but the same thing with the Rams defense, young defense. Chris Shula was able, and a very young defensive coordinator was able to get that unit playing at a really high level. And of course, McVay is one of the top offensive minds in the league and one of the top coaches as well. So if you get the right pieces with the right chef, the right ingredients and the right chef, you can make magic happen sooner than not, right? And if it's a nice assortment of rookies, second-year player with Renardo Green, and some veterans with Warner and Bosa, and I think one of the most underrated signings, free agent or draft, that the Niners made was Jason Pinnock. I think he was like a sneaky good signing. Now, the Niners knew that Mustafa blew out his knee when they signed him. We had no idea for like a month or two after that. But he's got 3 years starting experience with the Giants. He played with Saleh in the Jets during his rookie year. I think he's going to slide in and alleviate the need for anybody saying, well, Mustafa's going to miss half the season or more. They got to go out and sign a Justin Simmons or someone. Guys, they got their veteran safety already. I'm not going to say he's going to be a game changer or a world beater or anything like that, but I think it's going to be him and Jair Brown until Mustafa gets healthy. And then they got some youth behind that. So I think sneaky acquisitions in free agency and overt defense signings or picks in the draft, and Saleh coming back, I think could have this defense and this team playing up to potential beginning of October.
I think this 49er team will have some bumps in the road and some ups and downs this season, but I do think they become a playoff team again. I do think they return. I just can't see them, even with injuries and rookie mistakes. I mean, that schedule it's literally the last. It's the last of the last place schedules. It's like 31st and 32nd in difficulty. You can't get an easier schedule than what the 49ers have this year.
No team that made the playoffs last year was an injury-ravaged mess. I think the closest would be the Texans because they lost Diggs early, and then it was Nico Collins or one of their other receivers they wound up losing late. Hence, they were like a two-and-done team in the playoffs again. But you're not going to make the playoffs or make a run if you have even 50% of the injuries that the Niners had. So it all starts with health, like every season. You know,
what do they always say? Health is what? Health is
wealth.
Health is wealth. Dude, I loved it. We had a good time as usual. Always a nice, comprehensive discussion. We'll be back, me and Al, during the season. For sure on Mondays.
Yeah,
with our guy James. He'll be back. I should have invited him to today. But he looks like he's been busy with his wife, going places and vacation and stuff. So
having an actual life.
Having an actual life. But I had enjoyed it.
Likewise, bud.
For anybody who's on X, because it seems like where everybody ended up being today, and not on YouTube. Don't be afraid of a 49ers Plus podcast YouTube channel or 49ers First Takes. I think you can't go wrong with either of us, to be honest with you. And
completely objective statement.
Pretty level-headed. We're fans. That's it. Nobody works for any magazine. Nobody works for a music radio station. Just normal dudes who are fans of the team. So for all of you who are in the chat, appreciate you guys coming through.
Thanks for joining.
We will see you for sure in September. And I'm sure you have stuff going on in your channel this week, I would assume.
Today's Friday. I think I posted or did my show Monday or Tuesday. I'm losing track of the days, but we're on like a once a week schedule now. Once we get back into the season or closer to the season,
Yeah.
I'll do a show Monday mornings ish, and then one on probably Thursday, which will be a look ahead to the upcoming week's games, a recap show, and then a look ahead show. So yeah, it feels like I'm slacking now with not doing two shows, but always enjoy coming
It's
on with
about to
you
get
and
real
other folks.
quiet for the next couple weeks with all the stuff that they accomplished with signing people and the draft and everything. So be prepared to have not a ton of Niner content on any, but I mean, I'll post on TikTok or shorts or anything, but it's going to be like a barren desert out there for a
Then
while.
you got your 30 days leading up to training camp after OTAs where there's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing. Everybody take care. Have a great rest of your Friday weekend. And we'll see you on the other side.
Enjoy
Peace,
the weekend,
everybody.
guys. Peace.